Coming from Oklahoma, the fortunate thing is I didn't have to walk. They have these things called airplanes now, and it was relatively painless. So I appreciate Finney having me, and Finney and Laura hosting me. I got here a day early, so I got a chance to walk around and refamiliarize myself with Boston. It's been quite a while since I've been here, so all is good. Can I just open in prayer real quick? Lord, we are eternally grateful to you for every measure of grace, for every blessing, for every good thing that you pour into our lives. We endeavor to love you in all of our imperfections. We endeavor to be good parents and good spouses, and I just appreciate the opportunity to come in and share some of my personal experiences with the people here. My overarching prayer is that every parent would walk out of here today and tomorrow with exactly what they need to reinvigorate themselves, to fortify themselves, to encourage themselves in you, that they can do this task that you have assigned to them to raise godly children. And we thank you in Jesus' name. I don't usually do this, but, and Fanny, well, I've got my watch. I've got 50 minutes. I have an hour. Okay. Oh, good. I'll take it all. But I want to introduce myself a little bit. Like Finney said, my name's Catherine. I've been married for 42 years to my husband, Jay. We tell everybody it's been 12 of the best years of our lives because marriage is hard, and we started out all wrong. We started dating, and I was floundering in my faith, and he was backslidden in his, and so I ended up getting pregnant. And so that's a hard way to start a marriage when you do it backwards from God's plan. And there was conflict almost from the very beginning. Lots of reasons why, you can imagine why, and just our personality differences. We have 3 children. Our oldest son, Jordan, was the one that brought us all together, and he would be 43. He had a heart-lung transplant when he was 17 and lived 5 years after that. So he died in 2004. It's now been longer that he's been gone than he was with us, which is really just a weird concept for me. But we still talk about him all the time. I think about him every single day. Every time a Tom Petty song comes on the radio, I'm guaranteed to cry. But our memories of him are well, almost all good. There were 2 times where I told him if the transplant didn't kill him, I might, but only 2. And then our middle son, Jacob, will be 40 next month. He lives in Athens, Georgia, with his 2 children. My oldest grandchildren, George is 9 and Ellie is 7. And then my daughter, Jessie, and her husband, Scott, live in Rapid City, South Dakota, just moved back there. He's career Air Force, retired. And they married late, and so they've got 2 little ones, a 3.5-year-old girl and a 1.5-year-old boy. And we were able to all be together for the new year. And it was just, if for some of you, Matthew was telling me that, they kind of have like the Father's house compound where they all live together. And I have to say, I'm jealous in a good and godly way, right? It's like, because it's just thank goodness we've got flight benefits. My husband works for an airline, so it's not quite, we have the opportunity to go see them, but not nearly as often as I would like. And it's very important to me as a grandparent that I have the opportunity to sow into my grandchildren's lives, because I truly believe in the scriptural model of multi-generational living, multi-generational teaching. God tells us that we are to instruct. And one of the things I love about my church, just briefly, is that we've been very intentional about taking the older people, us now. Everybody got offended about being called seniors on the move. So it's like, I'm sorry, deal with reality. You're a senior. So now it's 55 plus, but the 55 pluses have mingled with the high school and college kids. And it's been the most beautiful thing, because we get together every Monday night and we're just there to fellowship and talk and be part of each other's lives, so that when these kids are in crisis, when they're having problems at home, whatever life throws at them, they know that they can come to any of us in that group and get prayer, get some counseling, get some non-judgmental listening, and no lectures like their parents might give them. So it's really been a beautiful component to our church. None of this has anything to do with my talk, of course. So let me get into it. The scripture that I go by is Proverbs 22:6, which you're all familiar with. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. And if you look up in the Sonico book of the Bible, train up, comes from the Hebrew word for education, and it's kind of in the way he should go, or literally according to his way. And if you want to cipher it, what it really means, according to their bent or their temperament. And I will tell you this, your temperament is fixed. You are born with it, you will die with it. It might temper as you get older. Mine certainly has. It might get more pronounced, but you're born with it, and it doesn't change. It's just part of the way God made you and wired you. I have people ask me that question, so that's why I say that. It also has a two-sided meaning in the way he ought to go. So sometimes scriptures have nuance, and the Hebrew grammar permits both interpretations. Way usually means a path that a person should take in their life, but it also, like I said, is kind of a disposition. It does not have the meaning that a lot of my friends have attached to it, who have a prodigal or a wayward child, and they're clinging to that scripture. Oh, God promised that if I raised them in the way they should go in church, then they'll come back. And I don't, sometimes I say things I shouldn't say, and it comes out of my mouth and hits my ears the same time it hits everybody else's ears, and then I go, whoops, I probably shouldn't have said that. But the Proverbs they're instructions. They're not promises per se. So the instruction is, if you raise your child according to their bent or their temperament, that when they're old, like I just said, they're not going to depart from it, because it's the way God made them. So I'm not saying you can't pray that prayer. I'm just saying it wasn't written with that intention in mind. The word temperament comes from the Latin word temperature, or to mix. Hippocrates, as we know, is the father of medicine, and he developed the idea of the 4 basic temperaments based on, for whatever reason, it seems kind of gross to me, our bodily fluids. So phlegmatic for phlegm, for the bile, the black and yellow bile, because he thought these things influenced human moods and emotions and behaviors. So how many of you are familiar with the terms I'm going to use? Choleric, I know you said choleric the other day, and I hear it both, so it's one of those words, I think you can say it either way. I just like, choleric sounds like that disease that everybody was dying from, 100 years ago. So I choose choleric, sanguine, melancholy, and phlegmatic. Who all is familiar with those? Okay, all right, good. All right, good. So about half of you. And here's the thing, and I know you know this, but a lot of times the truth just needs to be reinforced again and again, and sometimes in different ways. But God wants to use everything about us. Our temperaments, which is part of our personality, our gender, our time in history, everything that makes us us is part of God's beautiful blueprint for our lives. And here's a really, he's created, we're all like snowflakes. I was reading that snowflake book in your house the other day, Laura, about the guy that used to take pictures of them, and it's really a fascinating story. But in Deuteronomy 32:18, God is speaking to his people through the Song of Moses, and he's rebuking them, and he says, you neglected the rock who begot you, and forgot the God who gave you birth. That word birth means to dance or even to twirl. And here's a fascinating fact. Finney, you might know this as a doctor, but your unique DNA has an alphanumeric sequence that plays a tune. Did anybody know that? You did? Okay, well, you and Finney then are like the brainiacs in the room. I didn't know that. I just thought, so what that literally means is that God danced or twirled your song into existence. That's how, some of us who grew up in dysfunctional, again, it's all a bell curve, on a more dysfunctional family than others who, were raised to, I was a horrible student, absolutely a horrible student, from the time I entered kindergarten till the time I barely made it out of high school. So I thought I was dumb. I had ADHD just like it was off the charts. And I know people say that now, I'm ADHD, and maybe you are, but I'm like truly was diagnosed at 9. Before they gave it letters, it was just called Catherine needs a spanking. And in school, it was called Catherine's going to the principal's office. But so it just made, the rules, sit still, raise your hand. It was, that stuff was just virtually impossible for me. So I was always in trouble at home. I was always in trouble at school. And Finney was talking about something earlier, which, by the way, didn't we all enjoy his talk? Wasn't that great? And Matthew's too. great, when I was in school, at least to me, the smart kids made A's. Well, the only A I made was my blood type. Okay, so I mean, if I made a C, it was a glorious day. And the other thing that was really hard for me was my parents sent us to a parochial school in Oklahoma City, and there was one grade per class. So my older brother, we're all in our 60s now. We all still call him Golden Boy. Kevin is Golden Boy. Kevin could do no wrong. He was the teacher's pet. He was compliant with the family system. And so I would always have the teacher that he had just had the year before. And I was telling the Swayzes at dinner last night, I always heard some version of, "Are you sure you're Kevin's sister?" What's like, well, I think so, because he calls my mom, mom, and my dad, dad, and, he's there on the weekends, so I can just assume that he is. Why are you asking? Oh, because I'm not like him at all. So my point is, my parents took me to a psychiatrist for the first time when I was 9. And they were trying to help me, but even at 9, I knew psychiatrists were for crazy people. So I started to believe 2 lies that colored more of my life than I would like to admit. And they were, there must be something wrong with me. Why else would I be going to a psychiatrist as a child? And because there's something wrong with me, it's not okay to be me. And those lives colored, like I said, more of my life than I would have liked. Why am I getting off on that? I don't know. Somebody needs to hear it. So the temperaments are just one of the things that make us unique. They're labels. When I was talking about some of this stuff with my husband when I was first coming to the awareness of it, he was like, "You're putting labels on me. Don't put me in a box." Okay, well, I'm just going to put you in the one you belong in, honey, which is the phlegmatic melancholy. You can bust your way out if you'd like to later. And like I said, these personality traits are often evident in childhood. So think of your own childhood. Were you the kid on the playground that was organizing everybody and making sure people followed the rules? If you were the rule follower, I guarantee you're a melancholy. Melancholies are the perfectionists. If you have a child that gets frustrated and wads up their paper because everything's not neat and precise, that's your melancholy. And I'm going to get into the strengths and weaknesses of each, but I will tell you, in my personal opinion, that can be the most difficult temperament. As an adult, as we talked earlier about the perfectionists, it's a very difficult pattern to break. And when you've got a perfectionist child, they're going to take some extra, love, discipline. My daughter is a melancholy choleric, or I think she's choleric melancholy. Actually, we argue about it all the time because we're both got that choleric. It's like, no, I'm right. No, you're right. No, I'm right. I'm the mom. But it's now I lost my train of thought. Oh, well, it'll loop the room and come back to me in a minute. And if you're the class clown, you were the sanguine. Sanguines want attention. That's why I love being a speaker, because you're all looking at me and listening to me, and that's such important things to say. And were you my son Jordan? Jordan was a melancholy phlegmatic. Jacob is a sanguine phlegmatic, and then, like I said, Jesse was the choleric melancholy. And I was telling the Swayzes last night, I'm so grateful that she was last, because I didn't learn about the temperaments until she was probably, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 or 5, and I would have ruined her. I would have taken her independent spirit and her not defiance, I don't want to use that word because that's negative, but just her independent spirit. I would have thought that was rebellion. I would have tried to discipline her to be more compliant. But because I understood the temperaments, I was able to let her temperament assist our family in ways that I'll try to explain here in a minute. And to this day, she's 38. Every year for now the last 3 years, we've taken a mother-daughter trip. We went to Greece this past September. And the thing I love about going with Jessie is because she's the melancholy choleric, she makes the plan. She's like, "Mom, we're going on this cruise line. You need to fly in on this day. Here are the excursions we're going to take, and I've got all these tickets for everything we're going to do." So I just follow around behind her like a little puppy wagging my tail. I pay for it, and she organizes it and plans it, and it's perfect because I'm sanguine. If I was going to plan it, I told them I probably would have showed up in Greece and thought, "What now? Oh, where am I staying?" I don't plan ahead. I tend to fly by the seat of my pants. So it's a great working relationship. and let's see. If you so like blah, 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 and the one who there's and then the phlegmatic. And for people like, who have lots of children, you're going to recognize that maybe you have, one or two or three that have the same overarching temperament. But the phlegmatics, they're the peacemakers. They're the go along to get along. They're the quiet kids that can be overlooked, especially in a large family where there's so much going on. And you maybe have, these two are, you're trying to oversee this and this one's supposed to, whatever. You've got life going on in your family, and that little phlegmatic can be such a blessing because they're just not a nuisance, but then because they can be so easily overlooked, you have to make sure that they don't feel neglected or left out. So all of this stuff, as you know, with parenting in general, is just a dance you have to do. Proverbs 4:9-5 says, the beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom, and with all your acquiring, get understanding. And boy, that has really impacted me, because understanding the temperaments, I read Florence Littauer's book, Your Personality Tree. And again, remember, Jay and I are just in constant conflict. Everything is just, everything. And he's an engineer to boot. So if any of you know anything about engineers, they're very cerebral, they're very logical. We'd been married, I don't know, maybe 3 months, like barely married. And I said something to him, and he said, well, if you could logically convince me, I might agree with you. I'm like, what did you just say? I mean, it sounded perfectly logical to me. I got so angry, I just started crying. I mean, that's how mad I was. The phone rings, I pick it up, I'm like, hello, it's my dad. He goes, what is wrong? I said, Dad, I swear, I thought the engineers were the guys that drove the trains. I didn't. I had no idea. And he was raised Baptist to boot. So not, he's like this massive rule follower, and I am not. Can we just say, without elaborating too much on that one? So it was a shock to me in a good way to realize that my phlegmatic, melancholy husband wasn't operating in a way just to make me mad. Because I could get myself, and we're creating understanding, aren't we? It's a glorious thing. So I could get myself and 3 little kids ready for church and tell Jay it's time to go to church. And invariably he would say something like, well, let me go shave. Like, what have you been doing for the last, 3 hours? And so again, conflict. We've been to so many marriage counselors, I couldn't even name them all. But it's okay, because, if you're sick, you go to the doctor. If you have a toothache, you go to the dentist. If you're going to kill your spouse, you go to marriage counseling. And so that's what we did. And the marriage counselor wisely said, Catherine, just go without him. An epiphany. That had never occurred to me. We have 2 cars. Why did I think we all had to go in one? So guess what? I started going without him. Well, the other thing you need to know about my engineer Baptist husband is that he is Dave Ramsey's evil twin. You think I'm joking? I was telling Finney, I think we got into a screaming fight one time over a quarter. I mean, it's like, that's back when they had payphones. I was like, finally, I'm like, just pretend I made a phone call. It's like, what difference does it make? At any rate, so he couldn't stand it. He couldn't stand that we were putting twice the miles on the car and using twice the gas. So guess what happened? He started getting ready on time, and we weren't having conflict. So, but like I said, I always tease him that he was born under the sign of molasses. I mean, sometimes I have to reach over and see if he still has a pulse. It's like, am I planning a funeral or am I planning dinner? Honey? Now, as you may have guessed, I'm about as sanguine as they come. My dad used to say I was the only person he knew who could go into a public restroom and walk out with a friend. But it's happened. I'm still friends with her today. So, you just start a conversation, and the next thing you know, you're having coffee together. And my blend, like I said, is I'm choleric. So I tell people it's like I'm Tigger meets, what did I write down here? The Tasmanian devil. So I like to have fun, but I'm very high energy. I run circles around Jay, which at this point in my discussion of him or description of him might not surprise you. And so it's just so, like I said, we've been married long enough now, we've kind of mellowed and just can give each other a hard time about stuff. But because he's Dave Ramsey's evil twin, we don't spend money on anything ever, no matter what. And you don't do anything, you do everything yourself. You don't pay anybody to do anything, you can do yourself. And one of my standout memories was we had this car that my parents had given us, this Buick 225 Electra, the deuce and a quarter we called it. And Jay wanted to wash it. And it's like, okay, well, let's go to the car wash. It's like, that was anathema. We're not going to do that. We have a hose and sponges. So I'm like, okay, so we go out and I'm like washing the car like this. I'm just washing the car and he's, like scrubbing the wheels with a toothbrush. I'm not making any of this up, okay? And because I'm moving fast and in big strokes, he's convinced I can't be doing a good job. So he comes over to inspect and micromanage and criticize. And so I just put everything down and went in the house. And then of course, he's like, oh, you're just trying to get out of work. It's like, no, I'm not. But you can't ask me to help and then criticize the way I'm doing it. But this was, again, the early part of trying to figure out what our strengths are and what we can do together. So now we've learned over the many years that I do the broad strokes and he does the minutia. I hate minutia. So if I'm going to paint a room, he tapes it off because he wants to make sure, that every tape edge is completely sealed and nothing seeps through. Great, honey, knock yourself out. That's tedious to me. So you paint and then leave the room, preferably the house, so you're not coming in to inspect my paint job every 15 minutes, and I'll do the broad strokes. I'll paint it. But that was a long and painful lesson for us to get to the point where we could learn to do that and have it be okay. Not too long ago in my prayer time, I wasn't praying about Jay. There was no issue going on. I was just waiting on the Lord. I don't know what I was doing. Just waiting on the Lord and not thinking about anything in particular. And this thought came to my mind that I know was from the Lord. And he said, Catherine, I gave Jay to you as your ballast. Well, that is not a word I use every day. So I knew it was the Lord. And I know what a ballast is. It's the stabilizing force of a ship. And it made perfect sense to me. It's like I call him Steady Eddie. It's like he's on this even keel all the time. The only thing he gets excited about is OU football and when our kids are born. I mean, the rest of the time, he's just Steady Eddie. And sometimes it irritates me because I get excited and I want him to share my enthusiasm, and he just doesn't quite engage. But because of his steadiness, because he's that ballast, I can just sort of hitch my bungee cord to him and, bounce all over the place and come back to this safe, stable landing pad. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, this is always funny, but it's true. One of the easiest ways to tell a person's temperament is in their driving habits. So guess how Jay drives? Somebody. Under the speed limit. It's like I say this because it's true. I hate it when he drives because we get honked at and flipped off almost every time. I'm not kidding, because he's just clueless and he doesn't pay attention, and he's the guy that you wish would just get out of the way. And so people will honk at us and swerve around us or swerve this way, and every time he goes, what's their problem? I'm like, you are their problem. You need to speed up or move over or both. To which he always says, and I mean always, in the word always, says, I've never had a wreck. And the other day we were driving somewhere and I was like, I cannot for the life of me figure out how you have never had a wreck. And so I say, without fail, I know, Mr. Magoo, but they're all piled up behind you. So it's like, I told him, it's like, you drove the first 25 years, I'm driving the next 25 years. So guess how I drive? Over the speed limit. Exactly. Not too far over, about 8 miles an hour over. So if they pull you over, you won't get a big ticket. And so if Jay doesn't go to these homeschool conventions with me very often, but when he does, or if we have to drive to see our kids because we can't get a flight or whatever, I do all the driving. And so it's a good thing if he'll just go back and sleep, because regardless of which one of us is driving, the other one's going. And because he's got that prohibitive conscience, he's always going, you're going to get a ticket, you're going to get a ticket, you're going to get a ticket. And I'm like, then I'll pay it. Okay? Or he pulls the Christian card. This is my favorite one. Don't you think as a Christian that you ought to obey the laws of the land and go the speed limit? To which I usually say, no, as a Christian, I think I should be transported like Peter was, and we could eliminate all this driving altogether. But that hasn't happened yet. So, for the first 8 years of our lives, we lived in apartments, so we never had the joy of home improvement. And we bought a house that's old by Tulsa standards, certainly not here, built in 1940, and it had these weird sort of like plaster skimmed walls. When people come to work on our house, which isn't very often, mind you, because Jake can do everything himself, it's like they can't figure out the construction. It's just really that odd. And so my first project was going to be to strip the wallpaper out of the hall bath. And so, I've got my squeegee bottle and my scoring tool, and I'm in there, and Jay comes in. Again, I'm not making any of this. That's the absolute honest truth. He's watching me, and he's like scared to death that I'm going to damage that plaster skim coat. And I'm thinking, I'm going to put more wallpaper over it. What difference does it make? Again, not being fully aware of my melancholy perfectionist parent. He wants it perfect, even if I put more wallpaper over it, nobody can see it, right? Is that how perfectionists are? It's like, it needs to be perfect, then you can put wallpaper over it. And I'm thinking, nobody's going to see the little dings and dents. So anyway, he comes in, he grabs the scraper out of my hand, a 1-inch scraper, and he starts going like this. I'm like, this is going to take 3 years. And so I feigned hunger, and I just said, the kitchen's a wreck. Would you just go down to Sonic and get us a burger real quick? And so he's got a servant's heart, bless him. And so he said he would. He put everything down. I know where Sonic is, and I know how slow he drives. Okay, so I hear the back door close, and I get a big scraper, like a 6-inch scraper, and I just start going, I'm getting it done. I want to get the whole bathroom done before he's back in 15 minutes. So he walks back in, drops the burgers. What are you doing? What are you doing? I'm like Home Depot, honey, I'm just getting it done. So I had to make him leave. But he was like just panicked over this. Anyway, dun 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 dun. I already told you my kids. So like I said, cholerics want to be in charge. And when Jessie, there was one day I walked into the kitchen. She was maybe 6 or 7 years old. It was a Saturday. So I walk in the kitchen, and she's like, she's got an omelet pan. She can't even see the top of the stove, and she's mad as a hornet because she can't flip her omelet, which means that she had gotten up, gotten the pan, gotten the eggs somehow, beat the eggs, put them in the pan, grated the cheese. She had done, and then she's mad because I was just like, who are you? It's like I used to joke she was the only 7-year-old I knew who was ready for her own apartment. She never really needed a mom. She would never let me brush her hair from the time she was 2. She didn't want me to tell her what to wear. She knew what she wanted. And like I already said, if I hadn't already understood the temperaments, I would have taken this as defiance. I would have taken it as rebellion, and I would have chastised her or disciplined her instead of just going, okay, whatever, honey. You don't want me to dress you? One less thing I have to do today. No problem. Now, I will say this, she didn't get to run the family. I just let her do things that were age appropriate, and one of the things, I'm kind of skipping around here, but that's what I do. Because they like to be in charge, one of her jobs was to set the table. And so if I had to discipline her for whatever reason, like she back-talked me or something, I would just say, okay, well, you don't get to set the table tonight. Now, to my phlegmatic sons, That would have been a vacation. It's like, oh yeah, punish me again tomorrow night, Mom. But for Jesse, it was like, that's my job. I'm supposed to do that. It's like, then don't backtalk me tomorrow. So if you understand your kids' temperaments, I did not send my phlegmatic son to his room for time out. He would read a book and take a nap. It was like, right? It was totally ineffective. But send him out to pull weeds for an hour, all of a sudden, he's like, snaps his head around. He's starting to look at things a little bit differently now. So I've got a friend named Betsy. She has 5 boys, and her second son, Lyndon, is choleric off the charts. I mean, like off the charts. Like, I don't even know if the boy has a blend. He's so choleric. And that boy got more whippings than the other 4 combined by 10. And then because she didn't understand the temperaments. So once she understood that Lyndon was a natural born leader and began to encourage him and channel that temperament and those abilities that come with that temperament, it changed the whole dynamic of their family. And then he joined the Marines right out of high school. And that young man was number 1 in every single parameter that the military grades you by. I don't know what all of them are. Leadership, marksmanship, number 1. And if she had disciplined him differently, if she hadn't turned the trajectory of how she was raising him, I don't think that would have been possible. He would have been beat down, beat up, and shamed, and it would have been a totally different outcome. And they're all, gosh, I guess they're all in their 40s now. Maybe some of them, maybe even, anyway, they're older. And still, he's the dynamic leader of that family. He's the one that gathers his other 4 brothers together. He's the one that makes sure the family system is functioning and intact because he's the natural leader of that family. And they honor him now rather than dishonoring him, rather than, chastising him or resenting him. It's like, hey, Lyndon, you're the guy with the plan. It's a beautiful thing when we can make this work. Now, every temperament has a basic need. We all have needs. We all need respect, okay? We all like to have fun. I'm talking about the number 1 driving force of each temperament. Sanguines, it's fun. We want to have fun. And if life isn't fun, we get depressed. And if our spouses deprive us of our God-given temperaments, we can get depressed. And depression looks different for each temperament, which I will touch on. Now, I was raised by 2 melancholies, very unusual. My dad was an only child. My mother was a firstborn. If you know anything about birth order, this is toxic. Not for them, but for their children. So 2 melancholy, perfectionist children. My mother's melancholy, choleric. My dad's melancholy, phlegmatic. Like I said, Kevin comes into the system. He's choleric, melancholy, so he fits in. I don't fit in anywhere. My younger brother, David, is a phlegmatic, melancholy, who also had a lot of learning disabilities, so I just always called him Switzerland. He was neutral. But it was just that idea that I couldn't jump as high as the bar was. Nothing was good enough. And like Matthew, I was also raised in an environment where kids were meant to be seen and not heard. And my parents they had very little tolerance for childish behavior or just normal childhood. My dad didn't have any siblings, so he didn't know how siblings interact, that we fight and we yell and then we get along again. And so it was just very difficult for me in particular, and then I made it difficult for everybody else in the family. But because life had to be perfect, it wasn't any fun. And I'm not saying we didn't have fun or enjoy doing things together, because of course we did. I'm just saying the undercurrent of the family, my basic temperamental need was not recognized and was certainly not honored or promoted. I already talked about that. So, holy cow, I'm like all over the place. So cholerics, back to the basic needs. Cholerics need to be appreciated. They work hard. They're very dedicated, The cholerics another way we think of cholerics is type A's. They're the super overachievers. They're usually like the CEO of a company or something because they're so high achieving and so goal oriented. But they have this need to be appreciated and acknowledged. Again, the phlegmatic low key temperament, they're the peacekeepers. And I want to emphasize again, we need all of these. And frankly, we need all of them in our family. So if your family is missing one of these temperaments, it's like a four-legged stool that doesn't have all the legs on it, because again, each temperament has its benefits that it can bring to the whole system. But because they're quiet and laid back, they want respect. They want people to acknowledge them, their existence, their importance, but they're quiet, so they're not going to ask for it. And like I've said, sanguines want attention and approval. It's no surprise that my love language is words of encouragement. When Jay and I did that love language thing, my number 1 was his number 5. And his number 1 was my number 5. So like everything about us that could be polar opposite pretty much is. But that was helpful too. He's still not really good. One time I sent him a text. He thanked me for his lunch, because I pack his lunch every day because he's not going to go out and buy it, okay? So he just texted me and said, "Thanks for lunch." Well, I texted back and said, "You could have said something like, 'Gosh, honey, I really appreciate you packing my lunch and making sure that everything, you get,'" whatever I said. It was like, very verbal. And he wrote back and was like, "That's what I meant." Okay, whatever. So I have to send myself texts. An encouraging email can make my week. If I get a text or an email from somebody about my books, how it benefited their family, I'll just feed on that for a week. It just lifts my spirit so completely. And sanguines will do almost anything to get attention, even negative attention. And that was pretty much my story. I had a lot of negative behavior that was begetting negative attention. When I look back on it, I was feeding that need for attention. The fact that it was a negative attention, I was getting in trouble constantly. I mean, did that bother me? Yes, but I don't know. The psychology of it is, as a child, I'm not thinking that. I'm not thinking, I'll do anything for attention. Let it be negative attention. Melancholies need someone sensitive to their deepest inner needs. They are the most sensitive among us. They tend to be the artists and the thespians, anything that requires a lot of in-depth emotion and being in tune with your emotion. Melancholies are kind of driven for. And they really need someone that can share their inner angst. So what fuels depression is if those basic needs aren't met. I know when, the sanguine wife whose husband used to love, all of her hilarious stories and her being the center of attention and now resents it. The choleric husband who has worked hard and doesn't feel appreciated and tells himself, all they want is my paycheck. Well, it's not true, but that's the perception he's being given because he's not getting the affirmation and acknowledgement from his spouse or the other people in his family or his workplace or wherever he's seeking to have that need met. When a phlegmatic is constantly in conflict, that drives depression. And I learned that the hard way. Like I said, we were in conflict for so long. We all have regrets. One of my biggest regrets is that our children lived in a household for as long as they did with so much conflict. I'm really grateful that they've turned out as well as they have. Of course, Jordan's with Jesus, so who can say? But we can unwittingly do damage. And I was driving Jay into this huge depression. And so it wasn't until I realized that I had to learn different ways of coping with my frustrations. I had to learn new coping skills. I had to learn to, it's like maybe it's just because he's phlegmatic. I can get loud, and sometimes if I get excited, I just raise my voice, and he'll say, "Stop yelling." Well, I'm not yelling. And I'll say, well, if you want to hear me yell, I can yell. But to him, it's like it's jarring. So I've had to learn to consciously, even after all these years, it's still conscious because it's not part of my innate personality to temper what I'm going to say, to slow down. Another thing, and I don't know if this is phlegmatic, it might be, but I've learned with him, if anytime I ask him for anything, it doesn't matter, like you want to go to the movies or, you want to go out to dinner, or his first answer is always no, always no. What I've realized is that he just needs time to process. He just needs to process something. So instead, when I needed a new car a few years ago, the way I approached it was I came in from one of my homeschool conventions and I just said, man, that car's really getting some miles on it. That's all I said. You know, another time I just said, you know, whatever, just kind of dropping little breadcrumbs so that when I finally was ready to say, I think if I'm going to be making these trips all over the place by myself, it'd be nice to have a more reliable car. It's like, it sort of became his idea because I was just planting these little seeds that I needed a more reliable vehicle. And so guess what? I got a more reliable vehicle, and it wasn't this dogfight that everything usually was when I would say I need a new car. No, you don't. Yes, I do. And, you know, we get into that kind of stuff. And so, again, I'm not saying we're perfect, but I've learned how to approach him in a way that he can respond to and end up being good for both of us. Melancholies want everything in perfect order, and because there's no such thing as perfection, melancholies, it can really, it's important to learn to lower your expectations, to be more realistic. And again, that can be really hard to do if your natural thing is, I want perfection, and I expect perfection of myself, and then you don't measure up. I'm always having to say to my daughter, Jessie, constantly, even now as an adult, Jessie, it's progress, not perfection. It's progress, not perfection. It's a constant mantra to her. And she gets it because I've said it enough times. And now she's a parent and she's trying to do that perfect parenting. And, you know, even when we were with them, she gets really, you know, her little 3-year-old, she's a hoot and a half, but, you know, she's a handful. And I think Jessie's got a little cleric on her hands. But, you know, I just said to her when she was kind of getting on to Kinsley and then feeling bad, I'm like, Jessie, it's progress, not perfection. You know, you'll get it. You're going to be fine. So I want to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each. And don't try to take notes because it's a long list. But what I will do at the end is I'll put them somewhere and you all can take pictures of them. And so every temperament has their strengths. And I don't like to use the word weaknesses because that's a negative connotation. So what I say are areas of improvement. We've all got them, okay? And the other thing I want to say is if you have a child or a spouse and you recognize more of the areas that need improvement, I guarantee their basic needs are not being met. If their basic, fundamental, temperamental needs are met, you will see more of the positive traits of that temperament. Make sense? Or not? Still true. Okay, for the phlegmatic. They are adaptable, peaceful, submissive, controlled, patient, reserved, diplomatic, consistent. They have very dry humor. Jay's hilarious, but he talks so softly that only the people right around him can hear what he said. And they'll laugh. There's like this little cluster of laughter. And because I'm the sanguine, I have to like shout it out to the whole room so they can all laugh at what he just said. Mediator. If you ever need a mediator, get a phlegmatic because they are so emotionally even-keeled that they can be objective, more objective than some of the other temperaments. Listener, content, balanced, obliging, shy, inoffensive, loyal. I've always said Jay's loyalty is one of the reasons we've been married for 43 years. He's just as loyal as your favorite dog, just one of the best traits about him. Areas that need improvement. Unenthusiastic, reticent, fearful, indecisive, uninvolved, hesitant, aimless, slow, indifferent, mumbles. Oh my gosh, I'm always saying, could you mumble that again, please? I mean, and of course then he gets irritated. Well, you get your hearing checked. No, you need to quit mumbling. Reluctant, compromising, silent worrier. The melancholies. Analytical, persistent, self-sacrificing, respectful, sensitive. They're great planners. If you are a chart mom, if you have charts for, you know, your kids' chores and all that stuff, and you actually keep them, I could keep them about a week. If you can actually keep, I promise you're a melancholy. Melancholies love order. Scheduled, detailed, idealistic, thoughtful, chart maker, perfectionist, sensitive, loyal, and deep. Resentful, unforgiving, hard to please, pessimistic, negative, introverted, moody, skeptical, critical of self and others, judgmental, loner, withdrawn, insecure. Cholerics, adventurous, persuasive, strong-willed, competitive, resourceful, self-reliant, positive, outspoken, forceful, daring, confident, independent, decisive, productive, leader, bold. I've never been on a jury duty. I don't know why. I wish they'd call me. I would love to do it. But just again, if your choleric is usually the one that's going to be the jury foreman. It's like everybody in the room just sort of knows. The energy is there. If there's a car wreck and somebody jumps out and starts directing traffic or something, guarantee it's your choleric. They're the ones that are decisive and take action and start giving directions to everybody else. It's an amazing thing. You know, the phlegmatics are paralyzed, the sanguines are wondering where the party is, and the melancholics are depressed because there was a car wreck. Bossy, impatient, short-tempered, unsympathetic, headstrong, proud, argumentative, workaholics, huge, huge, huge area that needs improvement in cholerics. They tend to be very workaholic because they're so goal-oriented. Intolerant, tactless, domineering, unsympathetic, rash, and it tends to be hard for them to apologize. I don't know why. It's really hard for me to apologize. I was never raised with an apology, even when I deserved one. That was part of it. But Jay has taught me how to apologize. As the phlegmatic peacemaker, almost always, if there was a conflict, which, like I said, there were a bunch, he was almost always the first one to come and try to make it right, to apologize, to own his part of it, because he wanted the peace. He wanted us to be connected again. So it's been a good lesson for me. Sanguines are animated, playful, sociable, convincing, spirited, spontaneous, optimistic, funny, cheerful, inspiring, demonstrative, talkers, popular, mix easily, lively, and funny. They tend to be undisciplined, repetitious, forgetful, interrupt. I can't tell you, again, to this day, my adult children sometimes have to say to me, Mom, let me finish. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Because I just want to jump right in there. Disorganized, which I am not. Inconsistent, messy, show-off, loud, scatterbrained, and restless. I know Florence Littauer in her book talks about something called masking, which is if you take on the temperaments of if you take on the characteristics of a temperament that isn't yours, it's called masking. Well, because I had two melancholy parents, I masked a lot of, my mother was very, very organized. Well, I learned organization. I don't think I would have been naturally organized because sanguines usually aren't. I even had a purse custom made that everything has a place that it belongs. I don't lose stuff. Everything, I don't even have a junk drawer, people. Everything in my house has a place that it lives. Jay Zoller has still not figured this out, but it is true. And I know where everything is. I mean, a lot of wives do. And where are my socks? They're right here where you left them, honey. But anyway, so I don't think that would be my natural. My sanguine son, Jacob, even as a child, he lost everything. I don't know how many winter coats we bought him. Dozens. And he quit wearing them because he knew he would lose it. And one time we'd driven 2 hours home. We'd stayed in a hotel. We get home, we're practically home. And Jacob's like, I mean, he's a teenager. He's like, where's my wallet? Well, we had to turn around and drive 2 hours back, get his wallet. He finally ended up getting some cheap wedding ring because he went through 6 or 7 of them. I mean, the joke used to be when we'd leave the house is, Jacob, do you have your head? Because he just, lost everything. I did lose him once. So I pulled into this convenience store. I don't know if I don't know. At any rate, you could pull right in front of the front door. You didn't have to park in a parking lot. And I had 3 kids, 2 of them in car seats. I wasn't going to get 3 people out to go get a gallon of milk. So I parked the car. I go into the convenience store. I buy a gallon of milk. I jump back in the deuce and a quarter. I'm barreling down the highway. Jordan's over here in the front seat, and he goes, "Where's Jacob?" I'm like, "He's right back." Ah! He was gone. I'm like, I'm freaking out. I whipped a U-turn in the highway. I'm barreling back up to the convenience store, and there he was, just like swinging around a pole. I jump out, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Jacob, weren't you worried?" He's like, "I just figured you'd come back for me." My choleric daughter would have hitchhiked at 3. It's like, I'm not waiting on her. She abandoned me. I'll find a way home. Okay, where am I? So let's see. I've got about 5 minutes. Let me. I always say everybody needs a sanguine friend. I've got a friend who doesn't have any sanguines in her family. So she's like, when we all get together for family dinners or holiday dinners, she says, like, it's painful. I have to like try to solicit conversation from these people. I'm like, invite me. I'll have them talking in 5 minutes. I have a friend who owns a trade show, a wedding show, and I had gone to one of the vendor meetings just to mingle. And I was talking to this chef from New York City. And anyway, I just had a great conversation with him. It was so interesting, but he told her later, he was asking about me, and he said if she lived in New York City, people would pay her to come to their parties and get people talking. I'm like, move me to New York City. I'll do it. So real quick here, to kind of like put this all in a like neat little package here. Think of a play. If you're putting on a play, the sanguine is the star, right? They're the center of attention. The choleric's the director. They're telling everybody what to do. The phlegmatic's the audience. They're just sitting back and enjoying it. And the melancholy's the producer. Personality goals, I've already said. Sanguines want to have fun. Cholerics want to have control. Phlegmatics want to have peace. And melancholies want to have perfection. Doing things. Sanguines want to do it the fun way. Cholerics want to do it my way. Phlegmatics want to do it the easy way. And melancholies want to do it what? The right way. Needs: attention and approval for the sanguine, achievement and appreciation for the choleric, respect and self-worth for the phlegmatic, order and sensitivity for the melancholy. So like I've said, sanguines get depressed when life's no fun and there's too much criticism. Cholerics when life's out of control and there's no appreciation. Phlegmatics when life is full of problems and there's no peace. And melancholies when life is a mess and they have lost hope. I want to end on a fun note. I put the books of the Bible to rhyme, as some of you know, and when I was when I was putting this talk together, I was just trying to think of cultural ways that I could, like associate this talk. So for some reason, I was thinking of Winnie the Pooh. And so Tigger's the sanguine, Eeyore's the melancholy, Piglet's the choleric, and Winnie the Pooh's the phlegmatic. And it's like once you know this stuff, like they say, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And you start seeing it everywhere. You start seeing it in your friends and your family members. It can be a little obnoxious at first, but once you kind of get used to it, you can relate to people differently. It's wonderful. So anyway, I want to pull out some Bible characters and just tell me no right or wrong answer. I didn't meet any of these guys, so I don't know. I'm just going based on my talk here. What do you think Peter's temperament was? Say it louder. Yes. Did you say that? Who said sanguine? You did. Almost everybody says choleric, but think about it. He was impulsive. He's the one that jumped out of the boat. He's the one that was always shooting off his mouth, right? So, I mean, really, it's like he's the sanguine one. John, come on, speak up. John, oh, I'm sorry, the Apostle John, thank you. Reclined at Jesus' breast. Yes, he's just always chill. I say that. Somebody pointed out that he was one of the sons of thunder. But when he's presented in Scripture, he's like reclining at, Anyway, how about Daniel? Now, think about this. Might be a hard one. What about Daniel? Come on, somebody. I've only got 2 minutes. What? I can't hear you. I don't know. I really don't know. I think he was phlegmatic, and I'll tell you why. Because he was faithful to 4 kings. And like I said, loyalty is one of the hallmarks of a phlegmatic. And Jewish legend has it, Jewish tradition, I should say, has it that he was King Nebuchadnezzar's nursemaid during his 7 years of insanity. Now that's some phlegmatic loyalty. Paul. This is easy. What's Paul? The Apostle Paul. Absolutely. And it had to be. He had to be. He had to fight adversity. He had to, endure persecution. He had to not care what the obstacles were or what anybody thought about him. I mean, think about everything he endured, and he still persevered. He's as choleric as anybody you'll see in Scripture. And what about King David? Yes. Absolutely. I mean, he's all at the beginning of the Psalms. It's like, oh, woe is me. You know, God, kill me now. You know, they're all after me, right? It's like life sucks and I'm going to die and it's just awful. But he also wrote all these beautiful Psalms. So he was a musician. He was a musician. And what did I say earlier? A lot of people that are in the arts are melancholies. So again, just from a scriptural standpoint, it helps to have these characters, these real people, be more human when I can attach some things that I use culturally here and now in my life to these people. So that's it. I'm done.